I should have stopped her, but I didn't. One touch, one whispered word, and everything crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. My heart raced, my mind screamed, and in that moment, nothing would ever be the same. I hadn't seen her in almost 6 years, but the moment she stepped out of the car, it was as if the air around the house shifted. The afternoon sun, heavy and golden, fell against her like it had been waiting all this time just to find her again. She wore a simple linen shirt tucked into faded jeans, her hair tied loosely at the back, a few strands falling over her cheeks. She looked older, calmer, and somehow more distant than I remembered. "Hey," she said, smiling at that familiar half-curve that used to mean you're still the kid I used to tease. I tried to sound casual, but my voice cracked a little. "Hey, long time, too long." She laughed softly. "You've grown up." Her words lingered, heavier than they should have been. When I was younger, she'd only visit for family holidays. She'd be the one sitting quietly in a corner, reading while everyone else talked over each other. I used to hover nearby, pretending to need something from the table, just to be near her. But we'd never been close. She was the cool cousin, the one everyone adored but never quite understood. And now she was back, staying for the summer while she worked remotely, taking the guest room across the hall from mine. That first evening, the house felt different with her in it. My mother was thrilled, talking endlessly about how it would be just like old times. Dinner stretched late. The laughter felt warmer, the stories livelier. But through it all, I couldn't stop noticing her. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she listened. The way her voice softened when she spoke to me, like she was trying to bridge the years we'd lost. Later that night, I found her sitting on the front porch with a cup of tea. The crickets were loud, and the air smelled faintly of jasmine. She gestured for me to join her. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Too warm," I said, sitting beside her. We talked quietly about small things at first. The city she lived in now, her work, how much our family had changed. I told her about university, how I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. She listened without interrupting, her eyes thoughtful, her tone kind. "You always overthink," she said at one point. "You did that even when you were little?" You'd sit there with that frown, worrying about things no one else noticed. I laughed softly. "Guess I haven't changed much." "No," she said, glancing at me. "You have. Just in good ways." The silence after that wasn't uncomfortable, but it was charged, like both of us were aware of something that didn't need to be named. The night breeze lifted a strand of her hair and brushed it across my shoulder. She reached over to tuck it back in place, and her fingers grazed my arm. It was the faintest touch, but it left a trail of warmth that refused to fade. I looked away quickly, hoping she wouldn't notice the flush creeping up my neck. She smiled, almost to herself, and said, "It's strange being back here. Everything feels smaller. Maybe we got bigger," I said quietly. She turned her head, meeting my eyes for a second too long. "Maybe." The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and toast. She was already in the kitchen, hair messy, still wearing an oversized shirt that wasn't quite buttoned right. She looked so at home in a space that hadn't been hers for years. "Morning," she said, sliding a mug toward me. "You look like you barely slept." "I didn't," I admitted, smiling. "You snore louder than I remember." She laughed, pretending to be offended. "I do not." The ease between us came surprisingly fast, like the years of distance had been waiting to dissolve. Throughout the day, we talked more than we ever had before. She showed me old photos on her phone, stories of her travels, the people she'd met. I found myself watching her expressions more than listening. The way her eyes lit up when she laughed, the slight tilt of her head when she was curious. That evening, as the sun set, we ended up in the backyard with glasses of iced tea. She leaned back against the wooden railing, quiet for a long while before saying, "It feels nice here. Peaceful." "It gets boring after a while," I said. "Maybe you need boring," she replied. "You're always chasing something." I can tell I didn't know what to say to that. I just looked at her, trying to figure out if she was teasing or if she meant something deeper. She caught my gaze, smiled faintly, and added, "You think too much, remember?" That night, I tried to read in bed but couldn't focus. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her sitting on the porch, the curve of her smile, the quiet confidence in her voice. It made no sense, this sudden awareness, this restless pulse in my chest. She was family. She was supposed to be familiar, safe, unremarkable, but nothing about her felt that way anymore. When I finally drifted off, The sound of her soft laughter from earlier still lingered in my ears. The next morning, when I saw her again, hair damp, barefoot, standing by the window as the morning light spilled across her shoulders, something shifted quietly inside me. I told myself it was just admiration, that it would pass. But as her eyes met mine and she smiled, I knew better. Something had started that summer, something I couldn't name, but couldn't stop either. And deep down, a part of me already knew that whatever it was, it wouldn't stay innocent for long. The days began to slip into a quiet rhythm after that. She settled into the house as if she'd never been gone, her things scattered across the kitchen counter, her laughter echoing down the hallway when she was on a call. It was strange how quickly I got used to her being there again, how I'd start listening for her footsteps in the morning, how the smell of her shampoo seemed to linger long after she'd left a room. Every evening, she'd wander into the kitchen after everyone else had gone to bed. It became our unspoken ritual. Two restless souls meeting in the soft hum of the refrigerator light. Sometimes we'd share leftovers, sometimes just silence. But there was something about those late hours that stripped away the need for pretending. One night, she was sitting cross-legged on the counter, wearing a loose t-shirt and shorts, scrolling through her phone. I poured us both coffee, and she smiled when I handed her the mug. "You're spoiling me," she said. "Just keeping the peace," I teased. She tilted her head. "Is that what this is? Peace?" The way she said it, quiet, thoughtful, made me pause. Her eyes met mine for a beat too long, and then she looked away, pretending to blow on her coffee. I felt that same tug in my chest, the one I kept trying to ignore. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told me about her apartment in the city, how she learned to cook after burning instant noodles 3 times in a row. I told her about my friends, my classes, the way I felt out of place everywhere lately. She listened like every word mattered. "You'll find where you fit," she said softly. "It just takes longer for some of us." I wanted to ask what she meant by us, but something in her tone told me she wasn't ready to talk about it. That night, when she laughed at one of my stories, really laughed, head tilted back, eyes crinkling, I realized how much I liked being the reason for that sound. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. The next day, we drove into town together to buy groceries. It was mundane, ordinary, but somehow charged. She reached across me to grab something from a high shelf, and her arm brushed mine. It was a simple touch, accidental even, but it sent a shiver straight through me. I stepped back quickly, pretending to study the cereal boxes. She didn't say anything, but I saw her lips curve slightly, that knowing, teasing smile that made my heartbeat skip. When we came back home, the afternoon heat had turned heavy, pressing against the walls. We made lemonade and sat on the kitchen floor, backs against the cabinets, legs stretched out. She took a sip and sighed. "I miss this place. I didn't think I would." "Why?" I asked. "Because it reminds me of who I was before life got complicated," she said quietly. "Back then, everything was simpler, easier to love people without thinking about how messy it could get." Her words stayed with me. Easier to love people. There was a weight in how she said it, something tender and tired. I wanted to ask her who she meant, but I was afraid of the answer. That night, I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen. She was there again, sitting on the counter with a book this time. The clock said 12:47. "You don't sleep much," I said, leaning against the doorway. "Neither do you," she murmured, setting the book aside. I crossed the room and poured water into a glass. "Maybe it's this house," I said. "It feels louder at night." She smiled faintly. "Maybe we just hear things others don't." Something about the softness in her voice made me look up. The kitchen light painted her face in gold and shadow, and I realized how close we were. Close enough to see the faint freckles on her nose, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her. We stood there for a moment, neither moving. The air felt thick, alive with something unspoken. She broke it first, whispering, "You look at people the way you read, like you're afraid to miss a single line." I swallowed, unsure how to respond. "Maybe I'm just trying to understand the story." Her smile was small but real. "Some stories aren't meant to be understood, just felt." She stepped past me, brushing my shoulder lightly, and the contact made every nerve in me spark awake. Her scent, faint citrus, familiar and impossible to ignore, lingered long after she left the room. I stood there alone, glass in hand, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. My pulse was still uneven, my thoughts tangled in a way I couldn't name. By the time I went back to my room, dawn was beginning to soften the sky outside. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, her words replaying over and over. "Some stories aren't meant to be understood, And even then, I knew. Whatever this was between us, it was already becoming one of those stories, one I wouldn't be able to stop feeling even if I tried. The rain came without warning that afternoon, sweeping across the yard in thick, slanting sheets that made everything look softer, blurred at the edges. The sound filled the house, a steady hum against the roof, the windows, the silence. She was in the kitchen, standing by the sink, humming faintly to herself as she rinsed fruit. I paused in the doorway and watched her for a moment. The light was dim, the sky outside a deep bruised gray. There was something quietly beautiful about how she moved, unhurried, lost in her own rhythm, as if she belonged to some calmer world I could only watch from afar. She noticed me and smiled. "You're staring," she said, teasing. "Just thinking," I said quickly. "About what?" "Nothing important." She tilted her head, wiping her hands on a towel. "You always say that when it's something important." I tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out awkward. She didn't press it, just gestured toward the counter. "Want to help me?" I was going to bake something. It's been forever since I tried. I joined her, grateful for the distraction. She handed me a bowl of flour, and soon the kitchen smelled of vanilla and cinnamon. The air warmed despite the rain. It was simple, ordinary, yet every moment felt magnified. When she leaned close to check the mixture, her shoulder brushed mine. When she laughed, I felt it somewhere in my chest like a physical ache. "Here," she said, holding out the spoon for me to taste. I did, and she watched me, waiting. "It's good," I said. Her eyes softened. "You're lying." "Maybe a little," she grinned, tapping the spoon against my arm. "You're terrible at pretending." The teasing came easily, but underneath it was a pull I couldn't ignore anymore. Every word, every glance carried something heavier, something neither of us dared to name. As the rain intensified, thunder rolled softly in the distance. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching the storm. "I used to love days like this," she said quietly. "When I was younger, I thought rain meant something was about to change." "Maybe it still does," I said. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. "You believe in signs now." "I don't know," I admitted. "But lately, everything feels different." "Different how?" I hesitated. The air between us was thick, expectant. "Like I'm seeing things I used to overlook," I said finally. "Like I'm starting to understand people differently." "You," especially. Her breath hitched almost imperceptibly. Then she smiled. Small, careful. "That could be dangerous," she said softly. "Maybe," I murmured. "But maybe that's what makes it worth it." For a moment, neither of us moved. The rain kept falling, hard and relentless, filling the space with its rhythm. And then, she stepped closer. Not much, just enough that I could smell the faint citrus of her shampoo, see the tiny droplets clinging to her hair from when she'd gone outside earlier. "You always say things like that," she whispered, half amused, half nervous. "Like you don't realize how they sound." I swallowed. "How do they sound?" "Like you mean more than you're supposed to." The words hung there, suspended. My heart was pounding. I wanted to say something, anything, but nothing came out. She looked at me for another long, fragile moment, then reached out and brushed a bit of flour from my cheek with her thumb. It was a small thing, innocent enough, but the world seemed to tilt with it. My breath caught. She felt it. I know she did. Her hand lingered a second too long before she pulled it back, eyes flicking away. "We should finish this before it burns," she said, her voice quieter now. We went back to the recipe, pretending to focus, but the air between us had changed. Every time our hands brushed, it felt deliberate. Every silence felt heavier. When the cake was finally in the oven, she sat on the counter and swung her legs idly, watching me with that same unreadable softness. "You've gotten quieter lately," she said. "I think too much," I replied. She smiled faintly. "You always did." "I can't help it." "Maybe you shouldn't try so hard to." I looked at her. Really looked. The faint curve of her mouth, the gentle exhaustion in her eyes, the way she carried warmth like it was something fragile. And in that moment, I realized how much of my thoughts she had quietly taken over. When the timer went off, neither of us moved at first. Then she slid off the counter, standing close enough that our shoulders brushed again. "We did okay," she said softly, glancing at the cake. "Yeah," I murmured. "We did." We shared the first bite together, laughing when it came out slightly undercooked. The sound felt easy, but underneath it was something trembling, the awareness of how close we'd come to crossing a line neither of us understood yet. Later, when she left the kitchen, I stood by the window and watched the rain ease into a mist. My reflection in the glass looked strange, older somehow, like I'd stepped into something I couldn't step back from. She passed behind me, her hand brushing my shoulder lightly as she said goodnight. The touch was fleeting, casual. Yet it stayed long after she was gone. I pressed my hand to the spot, feeling the echo of her warmth, and wondered how something so small could feel so irreversible. Because deep down, I already knew what the rain had been trying to tell us all along. That change had already begun, and there was no stopping it now. The house was quiet, so quiet it felt almost unnatural. The rest of the family was asleep, their steady breathing a distant hum through the walls. I had woken thirsty, moving carefully through the dark hallways, barefoot on the cool wooden floor, trying not to wake anyone. The faint moonlight filtered through the kitchen window, casting long shadows across the countertops. I reached for a glass, fumbling slightly in the dim light when I froze. She was already there, leaning against the counter, her silhouette bathed in soft, silver light. Her hair was loose, cascading over one shoulder, catching the moonlight like strands of silk. She turned as I entered, eyes widening just a fraction before a faint, knowing smile curved her lips. "You're awake too," she said softly, her voice just above a whisper. I nodded, suddenly aware of how my pulse had jumped. "Thirsty," I admitted. My voice sounded thin, uncertain. "Me too," she said, reaching for the kettle. Her movements were slow, deliberate, and I couldn't stop my eyes from following every curve of her body. She caught me staring and didn't look away, only lifted an eyebrow, teasing without a word. We filled our glasses in near silence, the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards the only sounds. I felt a tremor run through me as I took a sip, the cold water doing nothing to steady my racing heart. She leaned back against the counter, hands clasped loosely in front of her. "It's strange, being awake and alone like this," she murmured. Her gaze found mine, soft but intense, and something about the way she looked at me made it impossible to think clearly. "Yeah," I said, my throat suddenly dry again. "Strange and quiet." "Too quiet," she agreed, stepping closer, so close that the faint warmth from her body brushed against mine. I felt every tiny movement, every subtle inhale of her perfume, citrus and something faintly sweet, familiar yet intoxicating. I tried to tell myself it was just curiosity or maybe fatigue making me feel more sensitive, but my chest tightened in a way that said otherwise. She tilted her head, brushing a stray strand of hair from my forehead. Her fingers lingered on my skin longer than necessary, and my breath hitched. "You've been thinking about it," she whispered. I swallowed, unsure what she meant. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, betraying the truth. I didn't dare speak. "The day in the rain," she said softly, almost a confession, eyes never leaving mine. "When we baked together, you were so easy to watch, so open." The memory hit me like a physical weight. I felt warmth spread through my chest, my hands itching to reach out to her, but frozen in place. I began, but the words faltered. She stepped even closer, her shoulder brushing mine lightly, deliberately. I could feel the steady heat of her body through the thin fabric of our shirts. She tilted her head, eyes flicking down at my lips before meeting mine again. "I can't stop thinking about that," she whispered. Her voice was soft, urgent, intimate, the words wrapped around me like a spell, making every thought scatter. My breath hitched, and for a moment I wanted to step back. I knew we were crossing a line I shouldn't even be thinking about, but the pull was magnetic, impossible to resist. Then she leaned in, just slightly, her forehead brushing mine, the smell of her hair, her warmth, her nearness, everything. It pressed in and consumed me. I wanted to pull away, and yet every instinct urged me closer. Her hand moved, brushing a light trace down my arm, up to my shoulder. My chest constricted, my knees weakening. "I shouldn't," she whispered, half to herself, half to me. But she didn't move away, and I didn't stop her. Her lips were on mine before I could think, gentle at first, testing. Seeking permission, my hands rose almost instinctively, lightly brushing her back, memorizing the contours beneath the fabric of her shirt. The world shrank to the space between us, the dim kitchen light, the faint hum of the fridge, the taste of her, the warmth of her skin. Her lips moved with deliberate slowness, as if each second was sacred. I felt her inhale sharply, the sound trembling against my own chest. Our bodies pressed lightly together, hesitant, tentative, yet charged with a force neither of us could ignore. Time became meaningless, the air around us thickened, our breaths mingling, hearts hammering in sync. I traced her shoulder again, feeling the tension in her muscles, the quiet surrender in her posture. Every brush of her hand sent shivers down my spine. A small sound, a distant creak from upstairs, made us both freeze, hearts jumping, yet neither of us pulled back. It was exhilarating, dangerous, intoxicating, forbidden. She whispered something I didn't catch fully, the words lost in the rush of emotion, but the tone was clear. Need, surrender, confession. My pulse raced, my mind spun, and yet a strange calm settled over me, like we were the only two people in the world, and for a brief moment, nothing else mattered. When we finally parted, only slightly, we leaned against the counter, chests rising and falling rapidly. The thrill of what we'd done and the weight of its implications hung between us, heavy and undeniable. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence was charged, intimate, almost sacred. I shouldn't have, I whispered, not meeting her eyes. Maybe not, she said softly, brushing a hand along my arm again, but I'm glad you didn't stop me. My throat tightened. She met my gaze then, soft, tender, yet undeniably mischievous. The moment was fleeting, fragile, and already etched into memory. We stood there, pressed against the counter, neither wanting to move, knowing the world outside the kitchen was still asleep. Moonlight pooled around us, painting everything in silver shadows. I could feel the echo of her touch, her warmth, lingering long after our lips had parted. And in the quiet hum of the fridge, I realized something profound and terrifying. Whatever line had existed before, we had crossed it, and neither of us regretted a single second. I should have stopped her, I thought, and my chest tightened with the truth. Yet I didn't. The first rays of sunlight sifted through the curtains, pale and hesitant, spilling across the floor. I woke to a quiet house, the usual hum of morning, somehow muted, as if even the walls were holding their breath. The memory of last night hit me immediately, the warmth of her, the taste of her lips, the silent electricity that had wrapped around us in the kitchen. My chest ached, and for a moment I wasn't sure if I wanted to move or stay buried in the sheets, clinging to that memory. Eventually, I forced myself up. The room felt impossibly still, the air thick with unsaid words and a tension that made my hands tremble slightly. I dressed quickly, avoiding the mirror because I didn't want to see the flushed, restless version of myself staring back. Downstairs, the kitchen was quiet. She wasn't there yet. I hovered near the counter, staring at the coffee machine like it held answers I wasn't ready to face. My mind replayed the night over and over, every glance, every brush of fingers, every heartbeat shared in silence. The forbiddenness of it all, the thrill, the guilt, and the need, it was all tangled inside me, and I didn't know which thread to pull first. Then I heard her footsteps, soft and careful on the wooden floor. She appeared in the doorway, hair loose, slightly mussed, eyes catching the early light. She paused when she saw me, a small tentative smile playing on her lips. "Morning," she said softly. Her voice was quiet, almost unsure. "Morning," I replied, my own voice brittle. She moved closer, leaning against the counter, arms crossed loosely. There was a pause, a long-waited pause where neither of us spoke, as if we were testing the waters of this new reality between us. I started but stopped. My words felt too heavy, too fragile. "Me too," she said, as if reading my hesitation. "I don't know what to say." I nodded. "Me neither." The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable this time. It was full of potential, a quiet space for honesty. Slowly, I realized that the tension didn't need to be filled with words. It was enough to just be here, together, awake in the aftermath of something that had changed everything. Finally, I took a step closer. "Last night," I began, voice low, uncertain. "I didn't regret it." Her eyes softened, the faintest tremor in her lips betraying her own vulnerability. "Neither did I," she whispered. She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead, a touch tender and grounding. "It's complicated," she said, a sigh escaping her, "but I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." I swallowed, nodding. "I don't want to either." I was scared of everything, of losing control, of what it meant. But seeing you this morning, it doesn't feel like regret. Just, I paused, unsure how to name it. Just real. Real. She repeated, almost a question, then, as if settling a weight she'd carried for too long, she added, I want to figure out what this is. Together. Without hiding, her words hit me like sunlight breaking through clouds. My chest tightened, but not with anxiety, with relief, with the strange, exhilarating comfort of the honesty. I nodded again, letting a small smile escape. Together, I agreed. We moved closer, instinctively, shoulders brushing, fingers finding each other in a tentative intertwining. The contact was soft, grounding, a quiet promise. The morning sun painted her hair gold, and I traced the line of her jaw with my gaze, memorizing the curve, the warmth, the familiarity now charged with something new. I don't want this to be secret, I whispered. Not anymore. She tilted her head, a slow, thoughtful smile curling her lips. Then it won't be, she said. Her voice was firm now. Sure, we'll take it slow. Carefully, but honestly. No pretending. I felt a weight lift from me, a fear I hadn't realized I'd carried. The tension, the uncertainty, the shame of forbidden longing, it all felt lighter now, shared and acknowledged. We sat at the table with our mugs of coffee, quiet, side by side, letting the morning stretch around us. The warmth of her hand against mine, subtle but deliberate, anchored me. Words weren't necessary, our closeness said enough. She brushed a finger over the back of my hand, and I caught it, holding her gaze for a long, suspended moment. I miss this, I said finally, the truth spilling out. You, being here, everything before. I didn't notice how much I wanted it. Her smile softened, a mixture of relief, amusement, and tenderness. I think I missed it too, she admitted, even when I didn't realize. The light shifted as the sun rose higher, golden rays spilling across the kitchen floor. Outside, the world went on, oblivious to the change that had happened inside this quiet house. I didn't care. Nothing outside mattered. Later, we wandered onto the porch, lingering in the soft warmth of morning. Fingers brushed accidentally at first, then deliberately, and I let my hand stay with hers. The air was filled with possibility, calm but charged, peaceful but knowing. We walked slowly, step by step, letting the quiet between us speak. For the first time since she'd returned, it felt like we were no longer hiding from ourselves, from each other. The line had been crossed, yes, but now it wasn't a boundary to fear. It was a bridge, fragile yet real, connecting us in a way nothing else could. She looked over at me, eyes soft, and smiled. Maybe crossing the line was how we found where we truly belonged. I squeezed her hand gently, heart finally steady, and smiled back. Maybe, I whispered, and for the first time in a long while, everything felt right. Did I do the right thing? Let me know in the comments.